Japan, the country where it's perfectly fine for children to handle alcohol. Why are we so far behind? Cold opener, I'm honestly not sure if I should show anything. I mean, it's nothing graphic or distasteful, but with how picky this platform can be sometimes, even showing a little bit of the girls in the bath, and I still haven't even shown anything, damn it! Besides, it's probably the most pointless cold opener of this entire series, as it doesn't actually happen in the show proper, and is only really referencing a very brief, not entirely important scene, so let's just move on. The episode proper opened on Aiko's mother hard at work at the geriatric care center. During her break, she was reading a letter from her daughter, which caught the nosy eyes of an old lady who, after seeing a picture of Aiko, recognized her from that time the Ojamajo secretly went to Osaka. And yeah, I actually went back to make sure this wasn't just some cheap retcon, and indeed they did help this old lady, so yeah, that's a clever callback to the first season, especially considering that the second season wasn't originally going to be made. Though on that note, I do think this episode will end up bringing some retcons into Aiko's backstory, though not the bad kind, as we will explain in just a bit. Anyway, Mommy Dearest didn't even question what her daughter was doing in Osaka, and in fact found it charming that she secretly came to see her, possibly without adult supervision.
That makes sense to me.
Back at the Seno household, Aiko's father had received a bonus from his job. Thus, to celebrate, Aiko offered to cook him dinner the next night. However, she would end up double booking herself, as likely spurred on by the old lady, her mom was stopping by to have dinner and spend the night at a hotel with her. Obviously, her father wasn't invited because, you know, divorce. Plus, as we learned, things were kind of worse than they were likely originally planned to be for these characters. Fortunately, her friends were there to help, and while they initially went with the more sensible suggestion of maybe just rescheduling with Mr. Seno, since at least his celebration could be flexible, Aiko was still concerned that she might end up hurting his feelings. Thus, the Ojamajo came up with a rather complicated plan where basically Doremi would pose as Aiko, whilst the rest of the little witches, sans the real Aiko, supported her. And to make sure their folks weren't worried, they made up the excuse that they were going to take care of Hana at the Seno residence, with Hazuki and Onpu posing as her parents, even though previously Aiko was the mother and
Don't know, I've gone cross-eyed.
Yeah, well, I would normally complain about them not really showing everything they established in an episode. With how many things were going on in this one, I think skipping most of this setup for this complicated plan was for the best. Anyway, the Ojamajo switched places, and Aiko went to see her mom, and yeah, I got nothing for this, other than to say it's a very well done, beautiful moment as the mother and daughter, who had never even interacted in the first season, finally met. Mad praise to the episode director Yasuo Yamayoshi, who we will see a little more of later this month for a bigger video we're currently working on. But yeah, after such an emotionally high moment, I think it was actually a good idea to lighten things up by heading back to the other Ojamajo and Doremi's half-assed Aiko impersonation. Oh come on, Nightingale is an awesome servant. Hey man, just slipped in a Christmas reference. Back with Aiko, she did at least partially tell her mother the truth about sneaking out behind her father's back to see her. And fortunately, she didn't question how her friends managed to distract him from the fact that his daughter was gone. Like, come on lady, I know you deal with senile old codgers all day, but you really should be questioning other people more than you would them. That's one of those lines that ends up really dating this show. Seriously, we have to try and pry my mom off of her phone. Anyway, this led into a very well done, subtle dinner scene as Aiko had a bit of an awkward conversation with her mother. It wasn't anything cringe-inducingly awkward, but thanks to us having an earlier comparison with her father the previous night, it was clear that she was far more used to talking to one parent than the other. Very well done subtext that established the unfortunate distance between the two that would take a lot of time to close. That said, the ultimate awkwardness is just around the corner. Anyway, after their respective dinners, both parties decided to get washed up. Yeah, interestingly, both sides ended up having very similar nights, at least in terms of itinerary. However, while Doremi and Hazuki reveal that they are both kind of daddy's girls who still kind of take baths with their fathers in a funny bit, things were a little more somber between Aiko and her mom. The daughter tried to ask if her fall from the jungle gym was the main cause of them splitting up, which in the first season, it did seem like it was a small part of it, and likely still was, but there was also likely some more significant underlying issues that contributed to the divorce. And as I said, this is the good kind of retcon that doesn't needlessly change around pre-established lore, but instead adds to it in ways that probably weren't initially planned. Though the stuff they ended up adding for this show, well...
愛子の弟か妹になる予定の子供をお母ちゃん流産してしもった。
Oof! Okay, did you really have to go right for the guts? So, yeah, this is the children's anime that has frank discussions about Sudoku and miscarriages, and while I'm personally a little iffy on talking about the former, I actually do think the latter is an important discussion to have with kids, especially if such has ever happened to a family. Generally, miscarriages are just things that are going to happen to at least 1 out of every 10 pregnancies, and there's no way of preventing it. And yet, Aiko's dad ended up blaming it on his wife overworking himself, even though no correlation with stress has ever been found. And again, I really have to give mad props to Yamayoshi for this amazing direction, especially this transition to Aiko's past with the setting red sun, symbolizing the oppressive atmosphere as her parents fought and eventually led to their divorce. There was also an implication that this was a suppressed memory, as this was also on the same day as her fall from the jungle gym because holy hell, this girl can't catch a break. Certainly didn't help that there was even more to her mother's sob story, as her mother, Aiko's grandmother, passed away whilst they had been estranged. Thus, she wasn't there in her final moments and had resolved to make amends by going full in on her career as a geriatric nurse.
そんなんやったら愛子も仕事辞めへんかったわ。
Get out. Just get out. With that, the episode ended with Aiko seeing her mother off, whilst the Ojamajo said bye to Mr. Seno, who also referenced the miscarriage, though he didn't outright say what happened to the child, which was for the best. This episode has already gone well over the weight limit with all this heavy stuff, so may as well end on a cute little race to school. I gotta say, this has to be the most bipolar show I've reviewed. One week it could be absolute garbage, and then other weeks it could be absolutely amazing. Episodes like this really do highlight what Toei's children anime can bring to the table without going too grim dark and presenting serious subject matter with grace. And as a bit of a retcon to Aiko's backstory, it fits in nicely and just adds a few more very sad layers to it, but in the good way. I really do miss the days when Toei had the guts to just bluntly bring up these very heavy subject matters and hardly sugarcoat them. And while I'm not saying they have to paint life for their target audience as a bleak canvas, they also can't just ignore this stuff and should try to bring it up in a digestible manner without skirting around the heavier issues like modern Toei. In this case, they kind of cleverly did by just adding it to Aiko's already tragic backstory. When you're already dealing with a heavy divorce plotline, it doesn't make that much of a difference to add a miscarriage on top, and more importantly, doesn't take away from established lore, and in fact helps to contextualize what was a vague conflict initially. The moral of Aiko's backstory was always to just accept the idea that some things are just out of the hands of a child, and that they should never blame themselves, as really, in these situations, no one is to blame. Sometimes it's just best to let things be, and while it's clear that Aiko still wants her parents to be back together, she seems like she won't force the issue, which is a great lesson to take away. And overall, this was another excellent Aiko episode with some fantastic direction and cinematography. About the only thing I could complain about, and really this is more of a little quirk, was how needlessly complicated the plan with the rest of the Ojamajo was. I mean, it didn't take up that much time, nor did it distract from the great main plot. It just felt a little tacked on for the sake of qualifying this as a magical girl anime. But really, if that's my only complaint, then this is pretty much just a perfect episode. Depending on if they add anything to their website this weekend, we might be taking a look at some of the early announcements for Hirogaru Sky Precure. Yep, y'all were very much clear about what you want for Christmas, and honestly I couldn't agree more. I mean, don't worry, we'll still do a review for Delicious Party 41, but I think like this show, the best thing we can do is start looking a little more towards the actual future. And until then though, for now my friends, and I wonder if this show is going to predict anything.